Port Charles had weathered countless storms, but the tension that swept through General Hospital in the days following Henry Dalton's death felt different, thicker, sharper, as though the very air carried an electrical charge that hadn't yet found a place to strike. People called Dalton's demise a tragedy, an accident, a moment of chaos inside a laboratory already humming with pressure. But Britt Westbourne knew better. The hospital's surgeons whispered the official version, the board spun a sanitized narrative, the press dutifully quoted hospital spokespeople. Yet beneath every polished explanation was a faint tremor that only the ones closest to the truth could feel. Britt was one of them, and she knew that whatever happened to Dalton was not a random burst of misfortune. It was a mistake, one with a name, a face, and a dangerous history attached. Jens Sidwell had always been a man whose ambition outweighed his caution. He wasn't reckless in the way most villains were. He didn't rage, didn't flinch, didn't reveal his hand. His danger came from calculation, from the cold, deliberate way he assessed a room, a patient, a rival. Dalton had been brilliant, but brilliance meant little to a man like Sidwell if it threatened the long-term vision he guarded with religious fervor. When Dalton confronted him in the lab, something snapped. Whether it was a shove, a misstep on the slick tile floor, or an unintentionally lethal swing of a metal tray, the outcome was the same. Dalton fell, the impact fatal, and Sidwell found himself staring at a body that should never have hit the ground. Britt didn't witness the moment, but she felt its aftershock. Sidwell had been different since Dalton died, too composed, too careful, too eager to help shape the narrative of what happened. Whenever she passed him in the hallway, she sensed a crackling undercurrent beneath his calm exterior. She feared it wasn't guilt that haunted him, but strategy. Sidwell didn't panic, he planned. And right now, Britt feared that she was somewhere inside those plans, wedged between what he'd already done and what he might be forced to do next. Her confusion was not the wide-eyed kind that left her immobilized. It was the kind that gnawed at her, pulling at the threads of her composure until the seams threatened to tear. She remembered the way Sidwell looked at her in the lab 2 nights ago, as though calculating not only whether she would stay silent, but whether she was worth keeping around at all. Being Faison's daughter had taught Britt enough about survival to recognize when she was being evaluated, when her usefulness was weighed against her liability. And this time the scales felt frighteningly unstable. Meanwhile, outside of the hospital's tense corridors, life moved on, though in Port Charles, moving on usually meant shifting into the next crisis. Marco Rios and Lucas Jones had chosen the worst week possible to schedule a quiet dinner with Ava Jerome. Their invitation had originally been innocent, a chance to reconnect, to discuss upcoming charity work, and to enjoy a few hours away from the hospital's constant emergencies. But as Thursday approached, Britt couldn't shake the feeling that the dinner had become something else entirely. A meeting arranged under the illusion of normalcy while danger quietly pooled beneath the surface. Ava Jerome, for her part, had perfected the art of walking a tightrope between manipulation and survival. Windermere suited her for that very reason, a fortress that sat above the river like a Gothic cathedral, offering both protection and isolation. Its long hallways and cold stone walls echoed with old secrets, and if Britt had learned anything from Ava's history, it was that no dinner inside that mansion ever stayed innocent for long. Rumors had begun circulating that Ava had been spending more time with Sidwell, meeting him in corners of the hospital where no one was supposed to notice, speaking in low tones near the East Wing stairwell, sharing unscheduled visits to the West Terrace overlooking Spoon Island. Britt didn't know whether these interactions were strategic, romantic, or something darker. Ava never acted without motive, and Sidwell was not the type of man who attracted casual companionship. Lucas had expressed excitement about the dinner, as though reuniting with Ava could restore some stability to their fractured friendships. Marco was more wary, his instincts sharpened by years of dealing with unpredictable personalities, but even he couldn't imagine that a simple dinner might entangle them in the fallout of Dalton's death. What they didn't know, what Britt suspected, was that Sidwell was expanding his circle, tightening it at the same time. A contradiction, yes, but Sidwell lived off contradictions. If he sensed that Britt was wavering, if he feared that someone else knew more than they should, he wouldn't eliminate the problem immediately. He would build a network around it. And Ava, with her influence, her ability to move between alliances without drawing suspicion, and her long-standing familiarity with moral gray areas, was the perfect partner for a man seeking both camouflage and control. The message Britt received that morning, a brief text from an unknown number with nothing more than a time and a location, made her stomach twist. She had no proof it was Sidwell, but the implication was enough. Someone wanted to speak to her in private. Someone who knew she carried pieces of the truth. Someone who might decide that her silence would only last as long as she felt safe. Her confusion transformed into dread. As Thursday evening approached, the city felt suspended in a kind of anticipatory silence. Lucas and Marco dressed for their dinner, unaware that the walls of Windermere might hold more than food and conversation. Ava lit candles in the mansion's parlor, her expression calm but her eyes flickering with something harder to read, anticipation, perhaps, or calculation. And across town, Britt stood at the edge of a decision, whether to go to the meeting hinted at by the anonymous text, or to disappear, to remove herself before Sidwell's plans tightened around her like a noose. At the center of it all was Sidwell, calm, methodical, and increasingly dangerous. Dalton's death was only the beginning, Britt felt it in her bones. Sidwell wasn't just covering his tracks. He was rearranging the board, choosing new players, deciding who would stand beside him and who would fall quietly away. And Britt, whether she wanted to be or not, had become part of the equation. As the clock edged closer to the time of the dinner, the truth settled over Britt with chilling clarity. Nothing happening tonight, whether at Windermere or in the shadows of the city, was accidental. Sidwell was moving. And when Sidwell moved, someone always paid the price.